This week, I'm talking to a big game legend from the other school, and we're going to talk about what it takes to break it down. Stanford quarterback Todd Husak coming up right now. Two, one. Hey everybody, welcome to Elite Athletes TV. I'm Mike Pawlawski. This year obviously has been weird, but it is rivalry week for Cal Stanford. That means big game. And if you look in the Trivial Pursuit board and it asks what's the big game of college football, it is actually Cal Stanford. That's the nickname. Today I'm talking to former Stanford great quarterback Todd Husak, and he was a phenomenal player while he was there. He has been the voice of the Cardinal for years now. He stepped away from the mic this year, but he still stays in touch with the program, has all the ins and outs, and we're going to talk about what this year's big game looks like. Before we get started, if you haven't done it yet, you love football, you love college football, you love X's and O's, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. Get notified every time we have new stuff coming out. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to talk big game, and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts about college football, big game, rivalry week, whatever comes to mind. And don't forget to share this video out. We're trying to help young athletes with X's and O's, with technique stuff, with drills and skills. And the more you share this out, the more people we can affect in a positive way. Now, let's get to that interview. Joining me now, 1999 Pac-10 quarterback, first team, took the Cardinal to the Rose Bowl and went on to become a world champion in the World League, just like I did in the Arena League. So another world champion here with me. Todd Husak was also kind of my running mate as the former analyst for Stanford football, knows everything about the program. Todd, welcome to Elite Athletes TV. I appreciate you coming on this week, brother.
Pleasure to join you, Mike. It's good to connect again. Big game week, too.
It's big game week, right? There's no dinners. There's no events. It's just a weird year overall. I mean, for everybody going in.
Yeah, it does feel a little different. And I think Stanford's game getting canceled last week and Stanford's start to this season. I'm looking forward. We've talked about this in the past. I'm looking forward to it truly being a big game where both teams are playing at a super high level. And the winner of this game kind of catapults into the top spot in the North and plays for something bigger. But this is not going to be that year. And hopefully we'll see how the year plays out for the conference and if a team can go undefeated and maybe compete in that playoff spot. But for now, it's just fun to watch college football again and certainly seeing Stanford and Cal out on the field.
Yeah, at least a little sense of normalcy. I remember when you could not get tickets to a big game, like as a player trying to scrounge and find tickets. That's what I want to see again, no matter what it is. Super hard to get the ticket. Everybody packed to all the way to the rafters in the stadiums. That'd be awesome to see. Let's talk a little bit about Stanford this year. As you mentioned, last week's game canceled. Washington State couldn't make it, right? COVID does it again. And so Davis Mills, who got a false positive test, didn't play against Oregon, then came in versus Colorado, looked a little rusty in game one, has another week off. Talk about kind of that first game for him. I just put a video. Anybody looking for it can get it right up here. But talk about how he looked in that first game and kind of his potential as a quarterback.
Yeah, he's got great potential. I think he looked a little rusty. He came on the end of last season to replace KJ Costello, and I thought looked great at times. I mean, he's got the physical attributes of what you wanted a quarterback, a big, strong, athletic kid. He can run pretty well. He does have a history of knee injuries. That's always, I think, a concern in the back of Stanford fans' minds, and hopefully he can continue to stay healthy outside of the false positive. But I don't think he saw the field as well as everybody would have liked against Colorado and made some maybe not bad reads, but he missed some things. And I think he wasn't throwing it in a triple coverage, but he wasn't throwing it to the open guy all the time and kind of missed opportunities throughout that game that could have changed it in Stanford's favor. But he showed flashes of, throwing that seam route or throwing the deep ball that you like to see. Part of it is just he wasn't here at Stanford over the summer. He was back in Georgia. And so not just missing that week against Oregon or even the prep week against Colorado, he hadn't been throwing the guys for the last 6 months. And you know how important, how many reps do you get in the summer? 2,000, 5,000, 10,000?
A ton of reps, yeah.
And so missing out on that over the last 10 months, I think it has to impact how sharp you are coming in.
Without a doubt. I wanted to throw to my guys every single rep they would let me throw to him just for that chemistry issue like you talked about. Yeah. He's got some pretty good receivers too.
I think Stanford has one of the best receiving cores in the conference. And you look at they're four deep. I mean, Simi Fehoko, Michael Wilson, and Connor Weddington, and they got some youth. That's a really good top three. And what amazes me is that you go back to Colorado, Stanford was running a lot of fullback and 2 tight end sets where Stanford doesn't have the personnel advantage, in my opinion. Like, spread teams out. I like Stanford's third wide receiver against any team's third defensive back, and you can create some mismatches. And then that opens it up for the run game. I like their running backs a lot too. I think they have talented players at the skill positions. The question is, can they take more advantage of it? One of the things I'd like to see, certainly against Cal, as you go back to the first couple of weeks, Stanford's defense has struggled. And you knew that was going to happen with the loss of Paulson and Debo, and they lost some players up front, a couple transferred. So they're young and thin. They have a couple injuries again at the linebacker spot. So the front seven is depleted. They're not going to stop teams. So you're going to have to outscore teams. And what I'd like to see more of, Stanford continues. This is year 4 or 5 where they run the play clock down to 2 every snap. And they're in the bottom 5 in the country in number of plays run per game. And when you have a great defense and a not offense, that's a good strategy. We have a great offense or potential for a great offense and not the best defense. You want to run fast pace, run 90 plays, because you can beat teams. And so that's where I'd like to see Stanford run a little more up tempo, maybe even no huddle, and see what Davis Mills can do.
No doubt about it. I will take you back to a big game memory for me with just that thought in mind. Tommy Vardell, Glenn Milburn playing running back for Stanford. And I think Tommy ran for 225 and Glenn had like 190 all purpose. I told Bruce Snyder, I said, look, we're not stopping them. How about if you just give me that 2 minute and let's roll? When Stanford went to 2 minute, we locked him into that nickel look, and Ron Rydell, God bless him, played corner. He was a former converted quarterback. And I thought to myself, if they put me at corner in the Pac-10, I would get beat constantly. And we put Sean Dawkins over Ron and just went deep. Every time we got out there, we'd hit 1 or 2 things, and then he'd line up, lock it down, cover 1. And I'm like, all right, take it. Let's go to the house. And we almost made them pull his scholarship check. It was one of those games.
Yeah, my senior year was the exact opposite. Cal was down to, I think, their second or third string quarterback. And we had a really good offense and not a great defense that year. And if we beat Cal, we win the conference and go to the Rose Bowl. So a lot on the line. And we got off to a good start. We scored a couple touchdowns. Deltha O'Neal had an interception and then returned a kick for a touchdown. And then I had like a long punt return. So the only threat was Deltha O'Neal. And we scored a long touchdown run. And after that, I think we handed it off every time in the second half. Like, just don't. And then every kick, we punted it straight out of bounds. And every kickoff, we kicked it straight out of bounds because we were not going to let Deltha O'Neal beat us. We were pretty confident that the offense couldn't move the ball. We ended up winning the game and went on to Pasadena.
Yeah, Deltha was a pretty special player back there, boy.
Yes, he was.
Went on to prove it and play in the league for quite a while too. So pretty good. Talk about kind of the big game, what it meant to you as a player when you were back there at Stanford.
Well, that senior year was special. Being able to beat Cal and clinch that Pac-10 title. I think that's what you and I were talking about, having it be a big game. And I'd love to see Cal on the other side. For whatever reason, the programs just can't be going in the same direction in the same year. It's when Stanford's really good, Cal seems to be rebuilding. When Cal's really good, Stanford seems to be rebuilding. But coming to Stanford and knowing the history and the big game week and all the stories, and you get the alumni back and the luncheons and the dinners, I think it's fun to hear from former players and how important it was to them. And I was fortunate to go 4-0, 2-0 as a starter. And a lot of the guys know each other. You're probably recruited by the same schools. Both teams recruit nationally. So I think that's a pretty unique thing between them. And then the fans. I mean, I work with a lot of Cal people. I work with a lot of Stanford people. I think it's fun to see even today Bay Area fans getting excited about it. And, even without fans this year, I've heard from a couple people this week. So it is certainly fun. I think it's might not appreciate it as much when you're playing it as a player, although you learn more from all the former players and how important it is. But I think as you sort of look in the rear view and you hear from all your former teammates and fans, and how important this game is to Bay Area.
Yeah, the first time I got in this game as a freshman, I didn't play, but the first time I was kind of part of all the festivities around it, it just blew my mind. Everything they had going on. There was a different dinner and a lunch and a bonfire, and I mean every single day of the week. Which now, like you say, looking back with nostalgia, was pretty phenomenal as a player. And you got to appreciate it year in, year out until that senior year when you're like, oh, this is my last big game.
My last
Holy
one.
crap.
Yeah.
I think talk about, both programs kind of being up in that high echelon of teams. Last time I remember both programs being ranked really high was actually my senior year. Stanford went on to play in the Aloha Bowl, and we went on to play in the Citrus Bowl. And we ended up 7th, and I think Stanford ended up finishing 15 or 16, something like that. Yeah, that's last time I remember. Jared Goff's last year, maybe they were both ranked pretty high.
Yeah, both teams were solid. Andrew Luck lost against Cal. That Cal team was pretty good.
Yep.
Andrew Luck led team wasn't at the high end yet. That was his freshman year. They instead of handing it to Toby, Andrew threw a late pick, and both of those teams were pretty good. That's probably the last one that I can remember where both teams were, if not ranked, had winning records.
Yeah. Well, tell me, so what do you expect from this game coming up this week?
Well, I'd like to see some up-tempo from Stanford. I think Stanford is trying to find the balance. Yeah, if you were to ask fans nationally or even locally, what do you think of Stanford football? Like, what's your impression of them? It's a hard-nosed, tough up front, pounded out team that runs play action. And the reality is Stanford has not had an effective run game the last 2+ seasons. Yet 2 years ago, Stanford in the conference was ranked 11th in rushing and 11th in yards. Last year, Stanford was ranked 11th in rushing and 11th in yards. This year, the trend continues, 11th and 11th. So I think at a certain point, Stanford has to figure out we're not that team anymore. We can't pound it out and get 6 yards a carry like they could 4 or 5 years ago when they had the maulers up front and the, second round or first round tailbacks like they had such a great string of. I'd like to see him be pass first. I'd really like to see him mix up an offensive standpoint, get some, not play action necessarily where he stays in the pocket, run bootlegs, get him out with run pass where we can throw it deep or get to the perimeter and have Davis Mills stretch that defense horizontally. Stanford does very little where they hit players in motion, right? Number one, they don't really move players before the ball, but very few yards after the catch. It's almost a stagnant type offense where they run a lot of hooks or curl routes. Or
all that sit down West Coast stuff, right? Where you're running the snag, you're running the yogi, you're running some kind of option.
Fade routes. Hit the guys on the run. We talked about Stanford's good group of wide receivers. Hit them in stride, and they can run away from people. So that's I'd love to see yards after two things: yards after the catch, and be a pass first offense. And up tempo. I think on the defensive side, put some pressure on the quarterback. They've really struggled early this year. The front seven we talked about is thin and young. Figure out a way to put some pressure on Garbers because he'll make some plays in the passing game if you let him. So I think put pressure on him, force him out of the pocket, and make mistakes.
Yeah, I think obviously it's the same both ways. Both teams want to put pressure on the quarterback, right? Try to figure out how to hit those vertical passes and make it happen. I appreciate you coming on with me talking football this year, brother. Always great to talk to another Pac-10 quarterback, especially with a rivalry like Cal Stanford. It's unique in that Ohio State and Michigan truly want to strangle each other when they see each other. But we all work together. We all know each other. We all like each other, except for when we step between the white lines.
That's right. Well, next time I see you, we'll share a beer and talk more.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks, brother. Being a part of this game is huge, and being a part of the legacy of a big game is also huge. And I'm sure it's the same for any rivalry game. But big game, because we all work so close between Cal, Stanford, the whole 9 yards, there's a lot of animosity on the field, but a lot of camaraderie off the field. It's one of the great traditions in college football. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget, if you haven't done it yet, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. Get all the college football content, X's and O's, all of the technique, drills, and skills that you need. Give me a thumbs up if you're looking forward to this year's rivalry, whether it's big game or whatever it is for you. And leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget, share this video out. Trying to help young athletes. The more you share, the more young athletes we can help here at Elite Athletes TV. I appreciate you watching. Wanted to bring you some inside intelligence from the big game this year. Cal, Stanford, Davis Mills, Chase Garbers, everything that you may see during the game. I'll talk to you again soon.